Hi guys, and welcome to or welcome back to the No Gluten Zone. I normally create content for people with food issues, and that might be allergies, sensitivities, intolerances, or autoimmune or other health issues that are affecting your diet. I actually had quite a few requests for me to do a video about a low FODMAP diet. And so I've done a lot of research and I have some notes I'll be referring to, and I wanted to cover this topic today. Hi guys, I wanted to interrupt your previously scheduled video just for one moment and ask for a big favor. So I've had a goal all along to hit 500 subscribers for my channel, and I recently hit 400, and it just makes it feel so close. I'm almost there. So I wanted to ask if you would consider subscribing. It is free. Just click the subscribe, and if you want to be notified of future uploads of videos, you can hit the bell icon. I would so appreciate it. And if you're watching this video at some point in the future when I already have beyond 500 subscribers, then I would still appreciate your subscription, because I guarantee you I have some new updated goal at that time. So I so appreciate each and every one of my subscribers and viewers. And I just wanted to ask for this favor. And also, if you hit the thumbs up or thumbs down, just to show me what you like to see. It helps me plan future videos and that sort of thing. So thank you so much. And now back to your video. I don't strictly follow a low FODMAP diet myself, but I can say that certain components in there I do follow, that as I was looking into it and I saw, I was like, yeah, I'm just doing this already. So I had health issues like my entire life, and I really struggled. Doctors brushed me off. They told my mom I was just attention seeking, and I really couldn't get help. And so I remember once I was an adult, I was like, I can go back and not go to a pediatrician, especially the ones that like already knew me and had kind of branded me and brushed me off for permanently, and I could actually get help. And so I went back when I was like 19, and I went for GI issues that I was having. And I had a lot of GI issues and a lot of pain issues as well as I was growing up. And so I went specifically for the GI issues because they were extremely troublesome for me at that time. And we went through all this stuff. I saw a GI specialist. They did a colonoscopy on me when I was 19, a barium swallow and a barium enema and a colonoscopy. I believe I did all three of those. And they brushed it off and said, I just have IBS. They kept insisting that I needed to drink more water and eat more fiber. And if you knew me, even at that time, it's like, it's a joke. Like anytime I share this with someone who actually knows me personally, they're just laughing. They're like literally on the floor laughing because, sorry, I have a puppy down here and she's like bumping the tripod. So if you see the camera shaking, my apologies. She's sleeping, but she kind of like moves in her sleep. So yes, people who know me know that I drink so much water. And at this time when I was 19, I was a vegetarian, and I was eating tons of fiber. I still eat plenty of fiber, but especially even then, I was just eating so much fiber and drinking so much water. And I would tell the doctors this, and they would just kind of roll their eyes and be like, okay, yeah, but like for real, drink more water and eat more fiber. Don't just say you are. Unfortunately, in the medical community, I feel like when they can't explain something, they just automatically assume that you're being dishonest or you're just misinformed in some way. They never accept the fact that there might be something else going on, or there might be something here they don't understand themselves. And I really dislike that because, and I know I'm a nurse. I am. And I know there are people who just flat out lie to their doctor to tell them what they want for a lot of different reasons. I know that. But when someone is suffering and they're telling you, like, I'm doing what you're saying, like, show them some kindness and some respect, and like, just believe them. Like, give them the benefit of the doubt, please. Like, that's just, it's a horrible feeling when they sit there and give you that look. Like, moving right along. So I learned things over the years to sort of help with this IBS. And I continue to have a lot of different health issues throughout my life. And finally, right before my 40th birthday, with a lot of pushing and insisting from me, I was tested for celiac disease and told that I had celiac disease. And I assumed, honestly, at that time, maybe the doctor told me, I can't remember, that the IBS diagnosis was a mistake and it was just celiac all along. And so for many years, I thought, okay, I just have celiac, I don't have IBS. But as time has progressed, I have been gluten free for about 13 years now, I think. I have noticed there is something else there that kind of comes and goes at times where my GI system is extra sensitive and sort of reacting to something, and there's no gluten. Like, I confirm, I check everything and make sure there's no gluten here, and there is still something going on. And so a couple of years ago, when I went for my colonoscopy, because my doctor actually sent me for malabsorption issues because of my iron deficiency, but they kind of just combined it into your regular, like, you're 50 and you need a colonoscopy. It kind of just got brushed into that category. And they did the upper EGD scope and the colonoscopy at the same time. And I asked him, it was actually, I used to work with this GI doctor. I respected him a lot and really valued his opinion. And so I asked him, like, look, so I was diagnosed with IBS and then I was diagnosed with celiac. And so do I actually have IBS, or was that a mistake and it was just celiac? And he said that it could just be the celiac. They could have made a mistake. That happens. But he said there could also be both happening. And he said with IBS, it can kind of come and go. So it's really hard to determine that. He said that would be really hard for me to tell you, like, for sure if you have IBS or not. And so based on symptoms, like, I actually think I do have IBS. It kind of comes and goes. Thankfully, it's not here very often. The most of the time I am totally fine, but every once in a while there are issues. And I have learned over the years certain ingredients to avoid to keep that from happening. And so that's kind of where I'm rolling into this low FODMAP thing. There were certain things I saw here that I'm like, oh, I'm just already avoiding this stuff because of this IBS or whatever it may be. So all that to say, I'm going to get into my notes and share these things that I found doing research on this with all of you. This is one of those things where it can be very individualized for people, kind of like an interstitial cystitis diet, where there's no one diet for everyone. Your triggers can vary somewhat. That's very much the case here. So what might trigger your symptoms, someone else may be totally fine. So this low FODMAP diet, there's general rules, but then you need to narrow it down specifically for you. So what is a low FODMAP diet? Let's get into that one first of all. So the definition here is a diet designed to manage symptoms of irritable bowel syndrome, IBS, and other GI issues by reducing the intake of FODMAP. So this FODMAPs is actually like an acronym. So the F is for fermentable. The O is for oligosaccharides. For example, fructans, galacto-oligosaccharides. That's a really big word. The D is for disaccharides. An example would be lactose, the sugars in dairy that a lot of people have issues with. And the M is monosaccharides, for example, excess fructose. The A is for and the P is for polyols, for example, sorbitol, mannitol, those sugar alcohols. So why does this matter? Why are people avoiding this stuff? These fermentable carbohydrates aren't absorbed very well in the gut. And for some people, they can cause gas, bloating, pain, diarrhea, or constipation. So it's important to know that there are different phases of this low FODMAP diet. And that's very common in a lot of diets, especially diets for medical needs, like, and not like like I have celiac, so I'm gluten free. There's no phases of that. It's just strict gluten free. But there are a lot of diets, elimination diets and other diets. Even the interstitial cystitis diet, I started out on a really strict one, and then you start experimenting with other things and watching your reactions. So there is a phase 1, which can last from 2 to 6 weeks. This is the elimination phase. You're going to remove all high FODMAP foods at this time to reduce your symptoms. So this would be in the very beginning. It would probably also be anytime you kind of have like a flare or a flare up of issues. I would go back to this phase, me personally. So you need to read labels. You need to meal plan. Meal planning is so huge for any dietary needs, whether it's health related, weight loss related. Like I'm telling you, you need to plan your meals, either one meal ahead or the whole day planned out, but you can't wait until you're hungry to decide what you're going to eat. You need to plan it like ahead of time, what you're going to eat that day, meals, possible snacks, that sort of thing. At the very least, know what the next thing you're going to eat is. Plan it so you're not stuck, because that's the worst when you're stuck and you're hungry and you can't think and you can't find what to eat, and that's usually when you make a mistake and you eat the wrong thing. Don't do that. Okay, so you also need to look for hidden sources of FODMAPs, like in garlic powder. I was not aware of this. Or inulin in processed foods. So inulin is one of these things that when I see it on the ingredient label, I will not buy that product. I already know that inulin bothers my gut. So that was really interesting to me. Okay, phase 2 is reintroduction. This can be 6 to 8 weeks or even longer in some cases for some people. So in this phase, you're going to slowly reintroduce each FODMAP group one at a time. And you're going to be watching your response to identify personal triggers. They recommend using a structured approach. For example, like 3 days per food, and you're going to increase the portion size of that food with each one. So you introduce a little, then you have a little more, then you have a little more before you ever introduce another one. And then phase 3 is your maintenance phase. Personalizing / maintenance phase. So this is a long-term eating pattern based on what you were able to tolerate, and you're aiming for the least restrictive diet possible in order to meet your nutritional needs and not have deficiencies and other problems coming from deficiencies. We always need to eat the widest range of food and variety of foods as possible as we can. Sometimes we're going through health issues and we end up so restricted, but we need to always aim for healing and moving out of that and eating as much as possible. And that's going to look different for everybody, but just keep that in mind, that you don't want to be super restricted if you don't have to. Okay, so examples of high versus low FODMAP foods. So looking at the FODMAP type of fructose, high FODMAPs to avoid would be things like apples, honey, mangoes. Low examples that would be better choices would be like strawberries, blueberries, and oranges. Looking at the lactose group, your high would be milk, yogurt, and soft cheeses. The low would be lactose-free milk and hard cheeses. Looking at the fructan section, things like wheat, onion, and garlic would be very high. And then lower would be rice, oats, and the green part of green onions. So if you're wanting onions, you can use that top green portion of the green onion would be a better choice for you. And looking at galactans, it says high is lentils, chickpeas, and kidney beans. And then low would be like, or a better choice to keep it lower would be small amounts of canned lentils. And then looking at the polyols, high examples would be like sorbitol, like in gums and peaches. And then low examples would be bananas, carrots, potatoes. So important things to keep in mind is that portion sizes matter. This I know this goes across the board with other things, especially like gluten-free items. They're allowed to have up to 20 parts per million. So, but then it's like, how many servings are you having, and how many foods are you having with that amount? Because the more you have, the higher amount you're getting into your body overall, right? So this is kind of the same thing. So if you're eating large amounts, large portion sizes, or a lot of kind of risky foods that have FODMAPs, even if you're eating lower FODMAP foods, if you're eating enough of them, you can end up going into, having issues because it's becoming a high FODMAP situation, if that makes sense. You have to be really good at reading ingredient labels. I think most of us with food issues become really good at this. The only thing that I always say is for celiacs, like ingredient labels do not show cross-contamination, and that is a real problem. And we need, especially in the USA, I'm in the USA, we need more honest labeling for foods as well as medications. Medications are horrible. It's like really bad, but food's bad too. So yeah, we need much better in this day and age, much better labeling. But with this, you're going to need to know how to read labels. You want to watch for sneaky ingredients so this is where I was like, oh yeah, I avoid this whole list here. Inulin, I won't touch it. Chicory root, I won't touch it. High fructose corn syrup, I do not touch ever. Sorbitol, etc. So yes, sugar alcohols are a major problem for me, as well as this chicory root and inulin. I see those a lot on like protein bars, because I always carry protein bars because I can't eat out. So if I'm out, that's like the quickest, easiest, I don't have to keep it in refrigerated or anything like that. I just have bars. Like I always have bars. I never set foot out of the house without a bar, just in case. I'm always like, you never know, the car could break down. I could be like really hungry and have to have a bar. So a lot of those bars, I'm super picky on reading those ingredients, and a lot of them, I think maybe protein powders too. The protein powders I buy now are just single ingredient protein powders. That's really important to me. I make my own shakes, but I think a lot of those might have them too. So those are like the two. There are probably other places. I just don't buy a lot of processed, pre-made kind of foods. So, but that's where I see them, and I'm always like, nope, I'm not touching that. So again, there is something called FODMAP stacking. And that's, like I said earlier, where if you eat a lot of low FODMAP foods, you're turning into a high FODMAP situation. So just something to keep in mind and be aware of. And so then there were meal planning tips that I thought were important. So focus on balance, getting a good variety, a good, well-balanced diet is so important. So protein, low FODMAP carbs, and healthy fats is where you want to build your diets. Build satisfying meals, because if it's not satisfying, you're still going to be hungry. You're still going to be tempted to eat something else, and that something else might not be a good choice. So make sure you're planning well, very satisfying meals. Protein and healthy fats are really usually the most satisfying for me. I don't really get well satiated on any kind of carb, whether it's healthy carb or otherwise. For me, it's all about the protein and the healthy fats. So everyone's different though, but just make sure that you are planning well to plan for being satisfied. And then I always say to plan for snacks. I know there are some people who are like, you shouldn't be snacking. Just plan for it in case you need it. And then if you don't need it, that's all great and fine. But I say plan for it just in case. And then I just want to encourage simple swapping. Always be willing to swap stuff. But if you're missing the flavor of garlic, try like a garlic infused oil, because it will kind of give you that flavor without the FODMAPs. And then if you want milk, try a lactose-free milk. I know they used to sell the like Lactaid drops, and you could just buy the drops and buy whatever milk you want and put the drops in there. It would tell you how many drops per like the amount of milk, and you could let it sit for a certain amount of time, and then you had lactose-free milk. And I used to do that because it was so much cheaper than buying the already lactose-free milk. So if they still sell that, I would really recommend it. That was really, really great because I used to do that. I was told way back that I had a problem. That's my puppy again. I was told a long time ago that I had a problem with lactose, but I don't seem to. So, but at one point I was buying those lactose drops and putting it in my milk. So if you're doing all this and your symptoms are still not improving, then I would say, double check for hidden FODMAPs in your food somewhere that you overlooked. This happens. This even happens with gluten. And even, I'm 12, 13 years into being gluten-free, and every once in a while I make a mistake. Thankfully, it's usually just something I bought. I didn't actually eat it yet. I still catch it at home before I eat it. But yes, I still make mistakes sometimes. Like it feels like a ridiculous mistake considering how long I've been doing this. So especially when you're new, but even when you're well seasoned in this, give yourself grace. Know that mistakes might happen and just keep double checking, triple checking. Sometimes it's something you've been buying for a really long time and you know it, so you're not reading the labels anymore, but sometimes they make changes to products without like announcing it. I have seen so many times where the packaging changes and it'll say like, new look, same taste, but when I check into it, there are changes. Sometimes things are now not on dedicated gluten-free equipment. That was a change one time and I was like, whoa, they didn't announce it, but somehow the packaging changed and that also changed as I looked into it. So just when you see packaging change, always do a very thorough check of everything and just always be checking, always be looking for hidden stuff in our food because, like I said, we don't have the best labeling laws, which is very unfortunate. Also, consider other health issues. Look into possible celiac disease if that's not already on the table. And also SIBO, SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. I always say SIBO, it's SIBO. This is super common in people with celiac disease. So a couple years ago when I had my colonoscopy done, I asked my doctor about this and he said the test is hard to get like insurance to approve or whatever for it. So he said, if you have celiac, I just treat you without even testing. And so I did. I took the antibiotics for, I think it was 2 months. And then you do like major probiotics after that. And it made a big difference for me. So maybe I did have SIBO. I'm not sure. But I definitely felt like my gut was healthier and better and feeling better after that. So definitely something to look into. I asked my primary before about SIBO. She didn't know. She said, oh, I can do the test. And she ended up doing an H. pylori test, not a SIBO test. So it can be really hard unless you have like the exact name of the test, which I don't know the exact name of the test for SIBO. But like go to a GI, ask to see a GI, say, obviously you're having GI issues if you think you have SIBO. So see a GI and ask. And if they don't know, see another GI. I will say the year prior was when my doctor first referred me to a GI because of malabsorption issues, because I had this major iron deficiency. And she said, you've been gluten-free for a lot of years, like you shouldn't be having malabsorption issues now. So she was sending me to the GI for that. And somehow they accidentally sent me to a surgeon. I don't understand this. So I went thinking this guy, I didn't know the guy, but I'm assuming he's a GI. And he said, he did not understand celiac disease at all. He was saying he was going to do a scope and he was going to prove whether I had celiac or not. And I was telling him like I've been gluten free for I don't know, it was like 10 or 11 years at that point. And like there's no way you're going to see celiac disease at this point. And he was like, no, like I'm gonna prove it. Like he said, I don't believe. He said people don't have celiac disease. It's a lie, and like all this stuff. And I was like, this guy's crazy. And then I asked him about SIBO, and he said that there was some other specialist above him that has to do it. It's some specialized scope, which it's a breath test. Like I know, like I don't know. Like his information was totally wrong. He was just making stuff up. And so he wanted to do upper and lower scope. And I actually just refused because I had zero confidence in this doctor and zero trust. And the scope results are only as good as the guy looking at it. And he's the guy looking at it. If he doesn't know, like, I was like, no. So I just refused. And when I went back to my primary the next year, she asked what happened. And I told her, and there, I had a couple other questions. I went with like 4 or 5 specific GI questions. This guy couldn't answer any of them. So I told my primary, like, I'm not trying to be rude, but like this guy couldn't answer any questions. And like, I wasn't comfortable going forward with the plan with him. And so she was like, who did you see? And I told her, and she was like, he's a surgeon. She said he does scoping and stuff, but she said he's not a GI. So I don't know why he couldn't just say, like, I think you're at the wrong doctor. You need a GI. Like, I don't know. The whole thing was really weird. I'm thinking he just wanted to make money. I was there and he was like, okay, is my assumption. I don't know. So ask. So if you go to a GI and like they can't answer your questions or they don't know, um, ask to see another GI, because I probably should have. I probably should have reached out to my primary, and so I just kind of brushed the whole thing off. But yes, go to a GI, and then if they aren't good, ask for another GI. So as far as eating out goes, like, I really don't eat out. Like, I could probably count on one hand, less than 5 fingers per year, how many times we eat out. It's for, like birthday, anniversary, sometimes, and we don't always go for those occasions, just sometimes we do. There's we did just go for our 20th because it was our 20th anniversary. Like, that's a big deal. But we went to a dedicated gluten-free place that we know. So we have like 2 places where I live that we trust. One is PF Chang's, and I've heard mixed opinions. The one where I live is like really, really trustworthy. I still take my dog, have her check my food, but they're really good. And then we have the dedicated gluten-free place that we go to. So we have those 2 options, and those are like our 2 for birthday, anniversary, maybe Mother's Day, Father's Day. A lot of times Father's Day we stay here and we grill, but those are like the possible occasions that we go. It's not much, and they're very safe places that we trust. With this is maybe, I mean, with celiac, it's the whole cross-contamination thing that makes it hard. But with this, it's like multiple types of foods and hidden stuff like the chicory and the inulin and the sugar alcohols. And so that's going to be hard. So I don't know. You could call and ask questions and plan accordingly, but I think it's going to be pretty hard with this. You might want to just not eat out. I know people act like that's impossible, but I've been doing it for over 10 years. Like, so it is possible. Like, we kind of have to go back to like old-fashioned days where you just have your food and plan and have bars and shakes and whatever you come down to that you can survive on. Just make sure those bars and shakes are low FODMAP, right? So then, like, yes, for traveling, you make sure you pack snacks, research restaurants. You can use apps. I saw recommended, I have not looked it up, the Monash University's app apparently is recommended for this. So something to look into. I forgot to check it out, but I'm not low FODMAP. If you are gluten-free, I have the Find Me Gluten-Free app. I used to like it more. It kind of changed over the years. It actually changed ownership as well. Now, if you pay, you're supposed to get more features. I haven't paid, so I can't really speak to that. But I do have the Gluten Dude app, and I like it a lot. I paid for the lifetime membership. I was paying yearly just to kind of check it out. I went ahead and paid for the lifetime, and they're actually building into it a whole travel thing right now. It's coming where you can like plan accordingly on your, like, you're going to tell it where you're going, and it's going to help you plan your route based on where you can eat, which that's pretty cool. I'll probably try it out. We travel a lot from California to Arizona. Not a huge distance. We're typically in northern Arizona. There's not a whole lot. I will say I went to a bakery. We went to Kingman recently, and there's a bakery there called Keto Carnivore. I found it in the Gluten Dude app, and we went, and it said, sugar free. And I was like, oh boy, what does that mean? So we went in and we asked, and they sweeten with monk fruit. They brought out the bag. And I don't know if I didn't see monk fruit listed for the FODMAP issue, but it is a problem for me. It gives me like major migraines. And some people say, oh, because a lot of monk fruit, including the one this bakery used, has the erythritol mixed in, which is a sugar alcohol, which is going to be a high FODMAP situation. But I have bought just liquid monk fruit, just pure monk fruit, and it still gives me these major, major migraines. So I was like, I can't have that. And she was like, I'm so sorry. And so, but then I asked, is there anything here that's not sweet? Because I could have that, right? And so I did. I had a bagel. I had a jalapeno cheese bagel with cream cheese, and it was fantastic. And my husband and son had sweets, and they said they were great. So if you're in Kingman or passing through Kingman, definitely check it out. It was definitely worth it. It was fantastic. And I found it through the Gluten Dude app. But they are bringing this whole travel thing into it soon. And definitely, look for that kind of thing if you're dealing with the FODMAPs. Honestly, when we travel, we used to take our ice chest and an electric skillet, and we just made our own food for the most part. But we now have it looks like an ice chest, but it's actually electric. It's a little refrigerator. I have to say, it was my husband's idea, and I was like, I don't think that's necessary. I was like, now we have to worry about plugging it in, and I thought it was going to be this big hassle. It's really not. It's really great. It is so nice to, not have everything wet in the ice, to not have to, in the morning we drain the water and get more ice, to not have things ruined because the water ended up inside the container or whatever. Like, there's my puppy, she's making noises too. I don't know if you can hear it. So all of that was kind of a hassle. And if that's a put off for you with traveling with an ice chest, then I highly recommend looking for these little refrigerators. It's like the size of an ice chest. Fantastic. So we still, when we travel, I mean, if we're doing like a week or longer, we take our motorhome and we have our whole kitchen there with us. But if we're doing like weekend trips, short trips, we go in car and we have our little fridge and our electric skillet with us always. So it is doable to travel with your food issues, is my point. Then, you know, try to have support. Number one, work with a dietitian. They can help you, to minimize deficiencies and, gaps and things like that. But also, hopefully you have like friends or family that will, be there for you, because you know, it can suck. There can be days where you're just like, man, this just sucks. And to have someone to turn to and talk to that can, hold you up during those days. Most days I'm totally fine. I don't care. Like, it is what it is. I've been living it for so long and I'm good. But there are days where I'm just like, man, you know, so it's good to have a support system. So resources I found was the Monash University FODMAP app. It is supposedly the most accurate food guide. So I need to check into that. There are FODMAP friendly blogs. It is recommended a little bit yummy and FODMAP every day. And then you can find, I'm sure, handouts for each phase of it. There's probably out there on the internet. I like Instagram. I'm just Instagram person because of the hashtags. You can find anything. And okay, I'm kind of bummed. You used to be able to follow specific hashtags and you would see anything that got hashtagged with that hashtag. They took that away recently. So you're back to just following accounts, which it used to be that way. But I really liked where you could just follow specific hashtags. But I do like where you can look up by hashtag. You can still look things up and find information, find accounts that you want to follow, maybe based off of that hashtag. So I do like that. I mean, you can search online, you can search on other social medias, you can search on YouTube. I'm sure there's a whole ton of stuff there, myself included. But yeah, I do really like Instagram because of that whole hashtag situation. And so that's pretty much it. You're going to go through a really restrictive phase, then the elimination phase, and then there's the reintroduction phase, and then like the maintenance phase. And, anytime you do go into a flare, you're going to go back to a more restrictive phase temporarily and then ease your way back in. It's, to have grace with yourself and be able to allow yourself to make mistakes and learn from the mistakes. I always recommend keeping a food journal. where you write down what you eat and how you're feeling, because sometimes your responses are delayed. And so, and honestly, maybe it's just me, but I'm like, what did I eat this morning? What did I eat yesterday? Like sometimes, like I really can't remember. And so when it's written down, especially for delayed responses, you can look back. And then if it happens more than once, you're like, yeah, I felt like this before. Then you can look back on those and you can start to see a pattern like, oh, I always had like this before that. Each time I felt this when I had something right before. And you can start connecting dots. I think it's so valuable to have food journals. I know it's a hassle. There's probably apps for it now. I know when I was first dealing with interstitial cystitis, I had paper. They were actually in the book that I was reading about the interstitial cystitis diet. And Confident Choices, I believe it's called, a fantastic book for IC. And it had a printout, and you would make photocopies, so I made photocopies of it, and I kept it, and it was so valuable and so helpful for me to do that and to narrow down what I was okay with, what I wasn't. And over time, like with IC, over time I can eat more things that I couldn't initially because healing had taken place. But I still have to be careful with those things. But I can have, there were things that I just couldn't have that I can now have. So that might be the case with the FODMAPs. I don't know, because that's not really, I mean, I follow it a little bit because of the IBS, but not extreme. Like I eat garlic and I have dairy and, I have milk in my coffee. My biggest restrictions, aside from the celiac, so there's the interstitial cystitis, things that I avoid to not bother my bladder. And then there's the eosinophilic esophagitis. There's things I avoid to not trigger that. That one's a little more problematic these days. I feel like I've got the IC well under control, but it was like 2 years ago when I did that upper and lower scoping that they found this. And so I'm still learning. I'm only like a couple years into it, still trying to figure out all the triggers and then avoiding the triggers. And yeah, lots of fun, right? Having dietary restrictions. So hopefully we can all just take care of our bodies, nourish our bodies, and be good and happy. So thank you for joining me. Please consider subscribing, and please give this a thumbs up if it was valuable information for you. And have a great day, guys, and God bless you.